welcome to my show. I'm really looking forward to this chat that we're going to have because I get to share the person that I've come to know with my audience publicly for the first time. Dr. Mazlan and I met about 10 years ago when we were both speakers at an event, and we hit it off and we stayed in touch. What makes this session really special is I've got a co-host, and my co-host this time around is Capt Czarena Hashim of Royal Brunei Airlines. She was my guest in my last episode, and I'll link that YouTube show in the description box so that you guys can go check it out. You'll want to watch that interview because she was the first female captain of any national airline in Southeast Asia. This is the first time that Czarena and Dr. Mazlan are meeting. And I know Czarena has been wanting to meet Dr. Mazlan and she has many questions. I've had a chance to get to know her pretty well. And she is so generous with her wisdom and a treasure trove about information, not just about space and space exploration, but also about her wisdom about women in leadership positions and the struggles that women face as they move up their career and try to juggle having a family life as well. She has had a stellar career by any measure, and her achievements are too long for me to read out one by one here. I will list them up in the description box below. Briefly, however, Dato Sri Dr. Mazlan is Malaysia's first astrophysicist who pioneered Malaysia's participation in space exploration, which included setting up a curriculum on astronomy in the National University. She was also the founding director of Angkasa, which is Malaysia's space agency. She's currently the co-chair of Malaysia Foresight 2050. She also set up the National Planetarium, the National Microsatellite Program, the National Space Center, and the Langkawi National Observatory. Dr. Mazlan has served twice at the United Nations as the director of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs over a period of 10 years. She is currently the director of the International Science Council. On a lighter note, I have to say I love her Twitter handle, which ends with rumored to be UN ambassador for aliens. Well done, Doc. We'll be having some questions about aliens.
Of course.
So Czarena, I'm going to hand it over to you to ask Dr. Mazlan the first question.
Okay, sure. Hi, Dr. Mazlan. It's a real pleasure to finally meet you. Just a little history actually about how I actually wanted to meet you. I had read about you I think about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was very impressed with what I read. And then I was doing an interview, and I think this was the launch of one of our airplanes. I can't remember what interview it was, but one of the questions the interviewers asked me was, if I had the opportunity to meet anyone on an airplane, who would it be? So I said to them, I thought about it a bit, and I thought, oh, I would really love to meet Malaysia's first astrophysicist, Dr. Mazlan Othman. And I think a couple of years after that, I then found when I met Farida, it was then that we sort of, she said, oh, I know Dr. Mazlan, she's my friend. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually mentioned her in an interview, that I would really love to meet you on an airplane, because I really think that if I sat next to you, we could, have a really good conversation. But one of the questions that I've been dying to ask you, Farida has mentioned you've had a stellar career, you're such a long list of achievements. What is it that motivates you? What is that driving force?
Okay, well, that's a question that, my career goes from being a researcher in the university to being in the government service, and then right on to being a senior diplomat in the United Nations, and then serving in an international NGO. So I would say at various times, different things motivated me. But I think from when I was in Malaysia, the thing that motivated me always was, what can I do for the country? It's always, what can I contribute to the country? Even when I was young in school. But then, of course, and always I felt compelled to look for things of national interest. I wasn't interested in anything, you know, at any lower level than that. So, but in the United Nations, of course, it wasn't doing well for my country. That motivated me, but actually to give myself to, in this case, doing well for the world. But so I suppose what motivates me is to know how is it that I can give myself. So even now, I'm no longer, now I think I'm like, I used to say I'm 3 times retired, but I just realized I'm 4 times retired. But I'm still motivated in what of myself can I give, you know, my time, my knowledge, my money, whatever I give. I think that's what motivates me, how to give.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I would, you know, that's I think one of the first times I've heard that kind of an answer. You know, it's so selfless. It's all about giving, you know, and that was your motivation and your drive, and it's impressive.
Yeah, hang on, Czarena. It's not so selfless, you know, because by giving, you actually get a lot of internal happiness.
Well, of course, yes.
Yeah. So it's about my own feeling rewarded and happy. There's nothing more in my life right now to make me happy than to feel, you know what, I've given that to a friend who has asked me to do something, even though, you know, it would have been difficult, but I did it anyway. So it's that feeling of, it's the happiness you get. So it's what is that, what I would call it's still self-motivating.
Yeah, that definitely is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of jump in and say that I think, Doc, if I could hazard a guess to say that motivation of wanting to give the best of yourself, to always be the person who is there to either solve problems or to take on the challenges, which I think a lot of people may say they want to give of themselves, but then when they are faced with challenges, they find it, they kind of step back because it's just too much, which actually brings me to my next question. You've led a lot of never before projects in Malaysia. You set up all these things that, you know, people weren't even thinking about in those days. Like, it was mind-boggling. When you were given those opportunities, did you ever have moments of doubt? And if and when you did, what did you say to yourself to overcome or sort of tamp down the anxiety that you may have had about, can I take this on? I've never done this before. And I'd like to hear how you navigated that.
At the time when I decided to do something difficult, for instance, I never doubted myself. I mean, that's the reason why I took it on. And then now that I've been reading about a lot of people and listening to, you know, on YouTube and all that, I came across these words from Richard Branson, but it's only like last year or a year before. He said that if there's a challenge, if you are given a challenge, don't say no. He says, take the challenge, and so even if you don't know how to do it, you can find out how to do it later. But never turn down a challenge. And then when I think back, I said, that's exactly what I was doing actually. I never turned down a challenge because I think I felt that I could overcome. It was a problem of knowledge. Of course I can go and get the knowledge, right? If it's a problem of having a team behind me yet, you know, then go and get a team. If the problem is funding, well, I go and get funding. So there was really nothing in my mind. There was nothing that I could not overcome. So I think I never doubted myself that I could do it. But of course, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but of course it's about your time as well. You know, how much time can you give for something? And that normally conflicted a bit in something else I was doing. Even now, I'm still always in conflict. I take on something new, a new challenge, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's not like I have nothing, I've got not enough to do, but I still take on the challenge. But I think when I take it on, I don't doubt myself. But then you had a follow-up question, yeah.
Yeah, where do you think that comes from? Is it your childhood? Is it just the way you were born? Or, because a lot of people that I speak to, particularly women, even though they're quite high achieving, will tell me that they have quite a bit of self-doubt about taking on bigger and bigger challenges.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. It's just me, maybe. So there are two parts to this, I think. One is, I'm a very curious person. So I think it's being curious. I'm always curious, what is this problem about? Because normally whatever is given to me is something nobody has done before, or it's too difficult for anybody else. So maybe in a sense, it's my curiosity where I'm saying, yeah, I'm curious where this can take me. I don't know, But the other is, I am, what is that word? Incorrigible risk seeker. Something about my character, because when I was in the US, they were doing all kinds of surveys and whatnot, So they made me do a survey on my attitude towards risk, And they and I, of course, discovered that I was not, you say you must take risk. So I was definitely a risk taker, but more than that, I was also a risk seeker. So I was looking for risks, even though I knew things were difficult, I was always looking for difficult things to do, to challenge myself. Wow. And maybe that's always in me. I mean, after I had my knee operation, for instance, I said, how do I know my knees are doing well? So I decided, okay, let's go climb the Himalayas. That's, because I wanted to take a risk and see whether, it's very high risk, of course, testing my knees, not on flat ground, but going to the Himalayas. But I would say my joy is in doing something that I know is highly risky.
I think that's a very key point actually for a lot of people to understand, is that you can be either born, some people are just naturally, like you said, just drawn to taking the risk. Yes. And going the next step, but it's something that we could all learn as well. Zarina, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about how you're a risk seeker, and all these challenges which you've been you've wanted to take on. Has there been any which you thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that?
It's never, I shouldn't have done that. Is the one thing that that really, well, I wouldn't say destroyed my life, but very close to it. I undertook it for very, very good reason. Let's see. It's not about I shouldn't have taken it. So it's about I should have prepared myself a little better. Okay. No, I never say I shouldn't have taken it. There's nothing that I've done that I've taken, that I've done that I regret, even though at this particular thing that I have in mind actually cost me my marriage, but still I don't regret it. I never say I shouldn't have done it. It led to certain things that make me what I am today, and I am, utterly grateful for what I am today, having gone through that really hard part of my life. Because it makes me stronger, for instance. I'm very convinced that God wanted me to go through that, so He makes me stronger. So I trust in God, and that if there is hardship, that is there for a reason. And yeah, life goes on. I always say, move on,
Yeah. Doc, so continuing on that theme about family life and all of that, a common question that or at least a common worry that a lot of women have is that they will often say that, yes, I love what I do. I am, I'm ambitious, I'm moving ahead in my career, but there's always that niggling doubt about being a mom. And so I'm kind of curious, because you were you've been a single mom for a long time. And how did you handle that with your kids as they were growing up?
I think my being a single, in my situation of being a single mom, that means that time with my daughter. Okay, so I think it made my daughter and me friends. If I think I was still married, I would always be that person associated with the father, and I don't think I would be the intimate relationship I have with her now would not have happened, and we became friends. So
what is the advice that you would give to moms who feel guilty about wanting to chase their ambitions, or being given, bigger opportunities, and they want to take it, but there's that guilt about, am I spending enough time with my kids? Do I need to maybe not take this opportunity right now? What would you say to them?
Until today, I regret that I didn't spend that much time with my children, especially when I was younger. But looking back, that they have turned out so well. I know that I wasn't doing many mistakes, but nobody is a perfect mother. I want to tell you that my friends who are full-time housewives, they have children who turn out imperfect. They have children who become drug addicts anyway. And so I think always that when you want to think about a balance between family life and your career, you cannot think of that balance on a daily basis. I'm going to make this balance every day. No, you can't. You absolutely cannot. But you can try and make that balance perhaps on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Because today I had to work harder because there was that deadline. But you know what? 2 days from now, I'm going to spend more time with the family and let the work suffer a little. So that balance cannot be on a daily basis. So women who think every day they must have a balance in their lives, you are giving yourself too much stress. And I don't think in the end, whatever you do to get that balance, things, if it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad, I tried to balance a lot of the time. I think I was more conscious of that balance in the marriage, rather than with my children. And still, when a relationship sours, it sours. People have all kinds of reasons not to love you anymore, And I didn't spend that much time thinking, is that time balanced with my children or not? Okay, I spend a lot of time with them. I know that. But what worried me about the balance was not so much my children as with my with the spouse. And in the end, it didn't work out anyway. So what the heck? You've got to do what's best. As I said, it's, you pray a lot that you are doing the right thing. You make mistakes, but when you make a mistake, you just you try to overcome it. But the best thing is you've got to be conscious of the choices you make. Once you've made a choice, you cannot look back and then start regretting, because there's no point. Once you make a choice, whether you want to be this or that, or do this or that, you really got to move on and strategize from there. There's no point looking back and having regrets. That's how I have, that's been me all my life. I've always moved on. So some things have been bad, but after a while I said, you know what, I've moved on and I won't look back.
Wonderful advice, Doc. Czarena?
Yeah, no, I can't help but agree with a lot of everything you're saying, Dr. Mazlan, because it's really how shall I put this? I'm really, really happy to be actually meeting you, because I don't get to meet that many people or women, really, sort of, these trailblazers, pioneers, high achievers, successful women. And meeting you, even though it's through Zoom, I can't help but smile, because I think I can see a little bit of myself in you. A lot of what you're saying, I'm agreeing with. And, how you say, like, no regrets. So which really is another question I want to ask is, if you had a chance to meet your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
My 18-year-old self was more than 50 years ago, okay? And I was just, and of course at 18, we just at the end of our school life, right? Just entering university. So already, because I was thinking, what was I at 18? So at 18, I already had a different way of seeing things, doing things. And so if I could go and if I could speak to my 18-year-old self, I would say, it's okay. You keep dreaming, because, I dreamt about winning a Nobel Prize and things like that when I was 18. Give me a break, obviously. But I was always doing things that are different, thinking, my way of thinking was different, the way I acted was different. And so I would reassure myself that it's okay to be different, to pursue your dreams, and in pursuing your dreams, you're going to be different. It's okay. And in fact, that's what is going to, again, using the word difference, is going to make a difference in your life and in the world. Because if you're like everybody else, how can you make a difference to the world? If your approach is the same as everybody else, how are you going to make any difference to the science or a policy? So some of us have to be different. And it's no good all of us saying, you not look down, but you're not comfortable with someone who's different. And so I'm different in those ways, but some people are different in other ways. And we have to respect that. We have to appreciate that they have the strength to be different. And the more we respect differences, not just acknowledge them, but respect that and support the differences. And this is the thing, support the differences. So if you're a boss, I think you should support somebody who's different from the rest of your team. Because without being different, we are not going to change the world.
I love that. I love those words, that because I've always been saying, Doc and Czarena, that the word tolerance irritates me, or it annoys me.
Yes,
because I think when you tolerate somebody, the definition of that is like you're barely putting up with that person. But I love the fact that you say respect and support, and I add the word celebrate our differences.
Yes.
Yeah. Which brings me to this question about education as a whole. I think in Malaysia, and I'm not sure how it is in Brunei, but at least in the Malaysian context, the culture of conformity is very embedded. We know that. And so what would you say? I mean, I love the fact that you said, be different, respect others, think differently. But because the culture is so embedded, for a lot of young people, what would you advise them, particularly those who are in public schools, about sort of coming out of that because they want to change the world, or because they've got some great idea?
You know that conformity is the way the authorities control us. So by making us conform to a standard rule, a standard set of rules, they know we won't go out of that. So they know how to make us workers. They can control us. So to me, conformity is a very very bad thing in terms of humanity. You know, it's like the feudal system and having all the workers think one way, you educate people another way. Okay, there's a big discussion about this, you know. But then how does a child get out of conforming? Unfortunately, part of this has to come from the parents and the teachers. You know, how would a 12-year-old have a strength to be different? You know, the friends in school are going to be, they dislike you because you're different. So for, parents and teachers must inculcate or cultivate a strength of appreciating who we all are individually, and hopefully the child grows up respecting or acknowledging who they are, even if they are different. I know I'm not giving the right answer, because how is this going to come from within you? You know, for a 12-year-old within you, how are you going to have that strength? I don't have that answer. So if I ask what I did when I was 12 years old, that, you know, allowed me, I didn't have role models, you know. I mean, like 70 years ago, I mean, 60 years ago, there was hardly any role models, no books, you know, that sort of thing. So it's the values that you get from looking at your parents and reading about what are the things that people admire. Okay, maybe I have the answer here. The thing is, if you for this child, I think we can encourage children to read about, I think we do this anyway, for people who are different. But more importantly, you have to show an example that this is a person who's different but is greatly admired. So the child will think, then I can be different too. And not necessarily we all want to be admired, but I will survive this even though I'm different. Yeah, I think reading about people who are different but eventually succeed for people in school, school children might be the answer, because not all parents know how to do the psychological thing, you know. As I said, parents lead by example, but how many parents can lead by example? They're not in a position to do so. But if not, then I think they should encourage the children to read books about people. Yeah.
I'm just so thrilled because what Czarena told me in her last interview and what you're telling me now, and I'm getting to share this with my audience, I think goes some way towards also them understanding about your own stories, and that, you know, as extraordinary as both of you are, there are also many things that is very common with all of us.
Yes. Okay.
Right? So I think the lessons, and that is why I do this and why the majority of the people I interview are women, because I think particularly Asian women, because we get a lot of YouTube videos with Westerners.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have enough Asian role models to say, you know what, these are women who just grew up just like you and me. And they went on to question things. They went on to try different things. They broke the mold. They became role models. So I think I'm very blessed to have both of you as friends. Czarena, do you have one more question before we go on to a little bit? I want to ask Doc a little bit about the work she's doing now, but do you have one more question?
So because we were talking about you know, conforming, and you mentioned about it's okay to be different, and you about how children can read, you know, and things like that, and really it boils down to changing this whole mindset. And then it doesn't help that if the books they read is not inclusive and does not show that you know, it's okay to be different, which is why, you know, these kind of things have to change.
Yes.
You know, so, but what personal advice would you be able to give to these young girls?
That's a little bit tough. It depends on, you know, what circumstances they are in. But generally, it's a cliche. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, meaning believe in what you want to achieve. And you've got to know, you got to say to yourself, this is, but you also got to know why you're doing things. Huh? So believing in yourself also requires some analysis of why you're doing things. I mean, you cannot just think, I want to something totally out of your circumstances without asking why do you want to do this. So if you know why, then you get to know, yes, I can do this, then you can believe in yourself. So it's a cliche, believe in yourself, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Czarena
Really
said
good
in the
cliche though.
interview, yeah, Doc, I have to tell you, in the interview with Czarena, if I asked her if there's one superpower, one quote that she lived by, and she said, confidence, self-belief is a superpower.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely true. So Doc, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about the work that you are doing now.
Yes.
You're now the director of the International Science Council, which is headquartered in Paris, and you are actually heading the regional office for Asia Pacific, and you're based in KL. So in a previous conversation that I had with you, you had highlighted that work includes disaster risk reduction and urban resilience among some of the key areas that you're focusing on. Could you break it down in simple terms about what that work means to the public?
Well, as you know, there's a lot more. Okay, how can I encapsulate the work of the International Science Council? What does the International Science Council, the International Science Council wants to be a global voice for science. And the International Council wants to make sure that science benefits all of humanity. So whatever you're talking about, whether it's climate change, disaster risk reduction, urban resilience, you use the science to benefit all of humanity. So that encapsulates what the International Council's vision and mission is. And then for each office or each organization, they choose what aspects of that global work they want to take on.
So what does that mean, like, for us in Malaysia? Like, could you give us one nugget or one example of something that you're working on currently?
Currently, the one that I'm most passionate about, that in fact, when I started thinking about it, nobody else was thinking about it. You know, for me, you know me, why would I think about disaster risk reduction? There's a whole ministry thinking about disaster risk reduction, or climate change. The whole government, the whole world is thinking about climate change. But there's one global movement that is not known or not so much appreciated in Malaysia, and that is open science, doing open science. What this means is that we should make all the results, all the outputs and outcomes of research open to be shared by all, especially if it is public funded. And so but the problem right now is nobody wants to share data. They want to, because it's the way science has been done in the past, because you get rewarded if you're the first person to discover something, or you are or you have enough data there to get more funding. And so the way we do science, did not encourage us to be open. The way people are rewarded in universities, to become a professor, for instance, you must write papers for Nature and all that. That requires that your work is actually unique. And so you don't want to share your work. But what we're trying to say here is that you could actually multiply the inputs to your work by sharing. And what we're saying now is that if you share your work right from the very beginning, there are many benefits to be had. And the usual philosophy of open science is as open as possible and as closed as necessary. Because you know, some work in medicine you cannot expose, especially if it's about patients and all that, but it will be as close as you need it to be. But open science is the way. And thankfully, COVID-19 has shown us there is no other way forward but open science. You see, I'm sure you read quite early on how people were sharing all their data, you know, on the genomics of the virus, and even to a certain point, what sort of methods work for vaccines. So people were sharing data, and I think, what would I say? The movement, the global science movement, just took off under the COVID-19 pressure, because none of us, for the sake of humanity, could keep secret what we knew about the virus. That would be totally inhumane for somebody to keep the information. Of course, things have changed a little now with the COVID-19. Some of those companies have insisted on their intellectual property rights. But you know, there are still very good stories about people who insist, no, my finding, my knowledge is out there for everyone. At the same time, you have these people who want to profit from the pandemic itself, which is shameful, which is scandalous. But open science is proven by the pandemic. If we want to survive as a human race, we must share our knowledge, our findings for the sake of humanity.
So, Doc, where is it available to the public now? Like, is there a website we can go to to read some of the documents that are there?
Yeah, you can Google open science, and there are lots of definitions of what is open science. Lots of scholarly works on what is open science and examples of open science. So it's quite easy to analyze what is open science. You know, my camera has gone a little bit blur. Let me see. Oh, okay.
I wanted to talk about Dr. Mahathir briefly.
Okay.
I think this will be interesting to people because you worked with Dr. Mahathir when he was Prime Minister, and you answered to him directly, or you reported to him directly, and you were in many high-level meetings with him. We've been talking in Malaysia a lot about the crisis of leadership that we've been going through over the last couple of years. So I'm kind of curious, what was your experience working with him as a leader and as a Prime Minister?
I always tell the young people today that I am so lucky that I went through my career, reached upwardly in my career during the time of Tun Mahathir, only because he had a vision, you know, and he knew what he wanted from his vision. So a lot of people, you have vision, but you don't really know how to get it, you know. So, you know, he had his wawasan 2020, his vision 2020. He, of course, didn't know the details. So he knew that we had to become a developed country by 2020. He talked about Malaysians being a scientifically civilized nation. And so I had to translate that vision within the context of the space program. Now, that was what I did. But of course, I can do this because there was a vision. And so there were the 9 challenges, you know. So of course, mine was a challenge number 6 or something like that, where we are contributors of knowledge and not consumers of science and technology. So I thought to myself, in space, in the space sector, in the space arena, and if you look at the future, you cannot become a developed nation if you do not have a space program that benefits your country. And once I decided that, So I went to Mahathir with the program, you know, to get there where you want us to get to, these are the things you must put in place. And so I put in a 25-year strategic plan, and this is how much it's going to cost, this is how many people you're going to need. And at every point but we took small steps, and we took baby steps. It's not like we immediately built a rocket. No, we didn't, you know. But the thing is, Mahathir himself was so interested in space. And on average, I went to see him every 2 or 3 months, just to tell him where we were at and where we should be going. And all the time, despite some really, critical turning points that would have killed me or the program at any one time, he encouraged me, like when the funding was being pulled from another source, somebody threatened and said, I'm going to pull out my contribution. He looked at me and said, Mazlan, you give me a paper now and tell me how much it's going to cost you to do that. Submit that to me and we'll see. So it was always like that. But I think most people want to know, what is it like to be working with him? What is it? I think your question is, what is it like to be attending meetings with him? The first meetings I attended with where people invited me to attend, I was in my 30s, very early 30s, and because I was very young, when there was an issue, and then he talked about it, and he said, this is what we should do, I had no hesitation to speak up. I mean, I didn't know that you're not supposed to speak up. Huh? Only the DG could speak up, but no, I didn't do that. And so I spoke up and said, no, Dr. Sri, I don't think so. I think, and I went on to say, and you could have seen the men in the room fell over backwards in their chairs. I think, how dare this little woman speak up, start to speak. And then when she speaks, she's saying no, But I think that was the time when Mahathir noticed me and said, who is this, And then he looked at me and he listened very carefully. And he said, why don't we look at that? And then, asked me to do something. And from then on, I was always doing things for him that he thought might be a little different or a little bit tough, even though sometimes it's not entirely my field. He said, I want Dr. Mazlan to have a look at this. And many times I have given recommendations different from what everybody thinks Mahathir wants. Because my point always to people was, what makes you think you know what Mahathir wants? You know what the Prime Minister wants. It is, I told my colleagues all the time, we are scientists first. We do our job as scientists, and what is the finding as a scientist, and we don't second guess what he wants and let him do whatever he does best, which is the politics of it, or whatever you call it, the policy, because he has knowledge. He has many more people who are much cleverer and smarter than me, who can put things in place, But I can put in that cog in the wheel so that they know how the wheel should be turning, I think. And actually, and Mahathir always said that to me, you don't worry about the politics. You just need to tell me what you think needs to be done. And many times people said, whenever they're working with Tun, they said that Tun never listens to anybody. He never changes his mind. Well, I can tell you a few instances where for the things that I was involved with or in charge of, he changed his mind as long as you knew what you're talking about, But the other thing about Mahathir is he has to respect you, okay? I've seen people give him presentations, And he's a very astute listener and astute thinker as well. So once he hears your whatever you say, he will then ask questions. And if you are not at least 10 steps ahead in what you are presenting now, yeah, you'll be screwed. I mean, yeah, because he's already thinking ahead. And if you are not already thinking ahead, you get into deep trouble. So one of the many lessons I learned from serving Mahathir is when you say something, your knowledge must be 10 times what you are saying at that very instant, so that you can address people's questions and be forward-looking. That's important thing. So you need to be able to look forward, anticipate the problems or whatever. That was what I learned from Mahathir. So until today, I keep that approach. And the other is, of course, always to be a scientist first. And your ethics, your integrity is about that, being the scientist. Don't try to be a politician when you're not. So be who you are first. You give advice only up to that point. And it's up to the person, you know, to take your advice or not. And I'm very philosophical about that. Yeah, if I advise you don't want to hear, no problems. No skin of my nose, as they say.
Yeah, I think it's the integrity, isn't it, of the fact that you are speaking based on your expertise. You've been talking a lot about space being the most expensive real estate. I remember a conversation I had with you, I think last year, where you said there's 36,000 kilometers around 36,000 kilometers, the space around the Earth is the most expensive real estate. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because, you know, we're hearing all these people, all these space barons, you know, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson. And you you are actually sharing the facts about why they're all actually going to space. And it's not just about, you know, going where no one has gone before. And I'd like you to give us some insight about why there's the space race actually happening.
Okay, right. Let me put that down first. One is this, okay, and the other is why. Okay, so for the longest time, we have benefited from being in space, or being able to operate in space. And one of them, and that is what you were referring to, that's the what we call the geostationary orbit. At that orbit, if you can allow me to do a little bit of explanation, that is that orbit where the satellite moves at the same rate as the Earth rotates, you know. So let's say my hand here is the Earth, bulat, the Earth like that, and there's a satellite. So the Earth rotates, right? But this satellite is also moving at the same rate. So what happens is that you are looking, if you are, okay, let me put us on top of this little finger, right? The satellite. While this moves, the satellite also moves. You notice that this satellite is always at the zenith of this finger. That's what it means. It means that at any one time, your satellite remains in place over your station or your area. It's not like it's moving all the time and at different rates. So you see it, you know, only at certain times. And there's only one point in space where that happens, where the satellite is moving at the same rate as the Earth's rotation. And that is what we call the geostationary orbit. What this means is that if you put a satellite at the geostationary orbit, it means that at all times you can communicate with the satellite. And so all our, you know, when you got your the Miasat and all the geostationary satellites, and there's not much more space in that geostationary orbit. And on the other hand, those satellites cost hundreds of millions of ringgit. I mean, a satellite half the size of a bus would be a few hundred millions of you know, and it costs another about 100 or 200 million to launch them there. But people do it anyway because they're going to benefit from the telecommunications. And especially today, communication is getting more and more important. As you know, Farida, the internet is going to be a basic right of any humans. Just like we know we must give people energy, water, because they have a basic right to them. We should have a basic right to the internet in the future, because without the internet, all of us cannot do a lot of things. You know this, eh? We know your children, if you have children, they're going to die if somehow the internet goes out, you know. But it's not just that. Everything else works through the internet. Your banking and everything needs that internet, needs that telecommunication. And so that's why I call it the most expensive real estate, because of the amount of money it costs to go there. But having gone there, the amount of profit you can make is also very, very high. You see, it's not coincidental that the richest, before all this IT, before Amazon and Facebook, the richest people in the world were the ones who owned telecommunications companies. But now, but how do you think Amazon and all that survive to become the richest companies in the world? It's through that telecommunications. You know, it's ordering things online. How does ordering things online happen? It's because of that telecommunication. So that is why people always say that the geostationary orbit is the most expensive what we call it real estate, simply because not anybody can go there. It's very highly regulated, and it's actually very contested, very congested right now. And a lot of future problems are going to arise from that. But that's a different story.
But I'm kind of curious, so who owns that real estate? You said it's contested.
No, nobody owns it.
Oh.
You get a license to you get a license to operate from that orbit, because you have to go to the International Telecommunication Union. The Telecommunication Union is a part of the United Nations. It is a specialized agency of the UN. All countries in the world are members of the ITU, and I think all of them. And any decisions made will be made in consultation with all members, all countries of the world. That's how you make the decision. So nobody owns space. The moon, the Outer Space Treaty says that space is the common province of all humankind. So if somebody gives you for a birthday present some real estate on the moon, it's a hoax. Or if somebody says to you, you know, this star in certain constellation, I give it to you with my love, undying love. Okay, philosophically, it's okay. But really, you don't own anything in space. But that makes a big problem for the coming exploitation in the world, which is what is driving some of our very, our billionaires, is to exploit the resources out in space.
You mentioned before also when we were talking about the mining of these celestial objects, yes, because of the chips or something. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the things people are looking at in terms of economic development of space is to harness or to exploit resources out in space. And by this, okay, we know already about global positioning system, we know about remote sensing, we know about telecommunications, but there's something more than that. Meaning you can go to the moon, you can go to Mars, you can go to the asteroids and actually mine them. Why do you want to mine the asteroids? You want to mine the asteroids because we are running out of materials here, certain materials. here on the Earth. And some of those materials are very critical to our chips, you know, the chip maker and all that. But they are in abundance in asteroids. So it is the next gold rush. They say that exploiting asteroids, for instance, is the next gold rush. And people are going to be richer than anything you have ever imagined. So right now, people are billionaires. Of course, people will start becoming trillionaires. Did I read somewhere that somebody has already become a trillionaire? Or maybe not. It's a company that's become a trillion worth, you know. But with the mining of asteroids, it is said, I don't know, I mean, there are a few, you know, qualifications there, that you can become a quadzillionaire. Higher than the,
like mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling. You know, all the zeros you're talking about, they exist. All, I mean, the distances, there's so many zeros, the speed is so many zeros, but apparently even the profits are in untold zeros. So, and that's what is exciting a lot of entrepreneurs out there. They think they can make money out of operating in space.
But a follow-up question on that, which is more sort of I suppose a more political question. The fact that you did say that, you know, space is sort of is for everyone. That is what the treaty says or whatever. Yeah. But the reality is, it's the Americans or the Europeans or the Chinese who've got the money to put up these satellites or you know, to do the space race or whatever. What does it mean for countries like us, who are the developing countries or countries in Africa? Where do we sit in that universe of competition? Because we don't have the financial resources, maybe also we don't have the talent like the engineers or the innovators who can do that. Are we just going to be consumers again because the big boys are going to control everything? What do you think is going to happen?
For a little while, yes, we will be. I mean, how can we compete with the Americans who are putting in money, you know, more money than the next 3 countries down the list, you know, to do things, whether it is for science or whether for exploration. No, we cannot compete with them. But because I was in the United Nations for almost 10 years, and I can see that the way the developing countries are going to enter the space era is by taking baby steps. But fortunately, a lot of developing countries are now involved in space. Namibia has a small satellite, maybe not Ethiopia, you know, but Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, you know, or Vietnam, they all are into some aspect of space, either in terms of education or building small satellites. And we are lucky because we have come to an era today where you can enter the space enterprise by using what we call off-the-shelf components. You know, before we couldn't, because then you had to invent the wheel every single time, because the Americans wouldn't export anything. You know, they kept a lot of the technology to themselves. But things have changed drastically, and even as I'm confident to say this, that any high school in the world that has a science program, that has a workshop, can build a small satellite.
Wow.
Today,
wow.
yes, because it's already graduated to that point, you know, where people who are passionate about this make sure that it can be built by high school students. They're actually being built by high school students in the US and Brazil. But if they can be built by high school students in the US and Brazil, don't you think they can be built by the high school students in Ethiopia as well, as long as they have some kind of basic support? So the good news is we are in the era of what they call new space, where the barrier of entry to doing things in space is much lower now. And so that is from the technology or the science point of view. But there's another area where we can definitely, as developing countries, influence what happens out there, and that is at the United Nations. So the fact that no country owns space, everything, almost everything, has to be negotiated internationally. No one country can decide what that rule is, what that regulation is, or even the guidelines about what's happening in space. And so I always say that there are two ways developing countries can contribute or can influence what happens in space. One is get into the negotiation process, get active in the United Nations. And of course, in a very small way, start with education. And there are lots of companies or even people out there in the US, in Japan, in Australia, who will help developing countries achieve those baby steps. So, but in order to get involved in the negotiation at the UN, you have to build your knowledge, you have to build an awareness of what's happening. So Malaysia, for instance, must involve itself in the international discussions of space. We cannot do that anymore. Of course, in my time, I was always out there, but there is a fallback right now that we think, no, there's no need to involve at the international level. That's a big mistake, because there's a lot we can do to influence what's happening in space without actually building that rocket or building that, $500 million spacecraft. There's still a lot we can do. And people will ask, oh, why, what do we do when Elon Musk goes to Mars? Do you want to ask that question?
Yeah, yes, I had a question here. Hang on, let me just look for that question. So the question was, okay, let me ask it 1 second. Let me just say, so Doc, there's been a lot of talk about all these space billionaires who are going into space and they want to have space tourists and all of that. You have been quoted as saying that you have a total belief that space science is important. But there are many people, myself included, who wonder, why do we need to go and mine or look for another planet when we are doing a pretty poor job of taking care of Earth itself? And I'd like to know your perspective on this sort of, which side of the argument are you on? Because there's people who feel very strongly on both sides of the argument.
Let me address first the philosophy where, why do we want to do anything unless we have solved all the difficult problems? That doesn't work. Because if you look even at medicine, there's a lot of very basic things you have not solved. Let's say we have not solved the thing about dengue versus can we have a vaccine for dengue or whatever. If we focus purely on that and you don't think of using genetics, for instance, to solve disease as a whole, because that's the next step up, you have to invest a lot of money. But no, people will say, why you have to invest money in that? No need, just solve the very basic problems first. So in all aspects of our development, we must go through the whole spectrum of development, from going to the very basic, but there has to be a lot of thinking and strategy for going further. If we get stuck here in solving all the problems of the world at this basic level, it's not human. As a human, you always want to explore things that are further on from that problem that you have. Okay, let me give another example. You have the Institute Jantung Negara. expensive. You built it, it was very expensive. And you know that Institute Jantung Negara is only for the elites, no? Well, not now, no longer for the elites. Why spend that money on Institute Jantung Negara when actually we have a lot, we can build more hospitals at the kampung level? So are we going to put all our money in building hospitals at the kampung, or are we going to invest in research and R&D in getting new drugs to solve cancer, which doesn't, which affects less people? So, but anything at all you mentioned, there is a whole range. Now, why do we want to build expensive universities when we haven't solved all our primary school problems? But you still want to build universities. Any developing country not only build schools, but build universities. Why? Because we need to go through that whole spectrum of development. So this is about space too. So if you and any science or technology, we want to solve. To me, that's what you can counter argue what I'm saying, but you have to also know that there are some of us who are motivated by having this foresight, the future of how we can solve those problems. And so to me, why do we go to space when there are so many problems on Earth that are not solved? Then, extend that philosophy a bit further, then it doesn't work. So in any case, I should tell you that a day without satellites, if you didn't have satellites, you and I cannot even talk like this. You cannot drive your car. You cannot go to the ATM machine and take your money. So
you can't use my Waze.
You can't use Waze. So we take space development so much for granted now. You can afford to say, oh no, we don't want to go to space. Why are we building the satellites? The only reason why we are all the time able to look at climate change as a planet is because we've got those platforms in space. If we didn't have those platforms in space, we wouldn't see the planetary climate. The whole environmental movement changed. From that first time, I think this is a picture from one of the first, trips we made to the moon, when we went to space and could look back on the Earth. That fantastic picture of the blue marble, they used to call it. That changed the mindset of many, many people, because then you see, oh my God, yeah. I mean, you always think, yeah, maybe, but then there's that picture that proves that we are just a speck of dust in the universe. And why do we want to destroy it? But in order to protect the Earth, you need to go up there. You need to have a bigger view, not just helicopter. No, you have a satellite view of what is happening. And most of the information you're getting about climate change is whether it's of the ocean, whether it's soil acidity, name it, is being very much enhanced by our presence in space. And that's why a lot of countries in the world built those satellites for monitoring climate change, for the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is the thing to come in the future. Everything, you want to use the handphone to know what's in your fridge. How is that going to happen? Okay, so, but somebody had the idea, what's his name? The Sri Lankan guy, I can't remember his name right now, famous author. He was the one who talked about going out to space and setting up these communication systems. It's a tip of my tongue. But somebody thought about it and implemented, and somebody else implemented it, of course. And then it's brought us to this point of our lives in the world right now, and we will never go back. But as I said, we are running out of resources. Okay, you say, don't mine anymore on Earth. But there are, you know, if we want to continue to build, to make chips and all that, we need certain certain elements that are running out on Earth. And there's also this thing which a lot of people know less about, and that is you can mine for helium on the moon, for instance, or other places, and that could be a part of the fusion, for fusion energy. We don't have enough of that on the Earth, you know, but that would be good for fusion energy. And you know, the ultimate of energy generation is fusion, where, you know, there's almost no ramifications in terms of air pollution or land pollution or water pollution. But you only think of it if you have space solutions, you know, like if we had a solar plant on in space, you will have a continuous source of solar energy. Right now, you know, when the sun, when the Earth turns and the sun is no longer shining, you don't have solar energy. But of course, if you have that plant in space where it's always above the Earth's shadow, you'll have it all the time. But you need to solve the problems of beaming it down to Earth. But it's not like it cannot be solved. It's a regulatory problem, actually. And so we need this mindset to go beyond the Earth. And I know you want to ask about Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, I was just going to make the point, and then I was going to make a point and then pass it on to Czarena because she has got a question. But I think your perspective actually has given me food for thought, because it's really the symbiosis between the Earth and the planets out there, or even the universe. Because I mean, maybe, you know, we take it for granted. At least in my case, you know, you don't think about how important what's happening out there is to the life that we live now, and that is why we need to invest in space. But Czarena, you have a lighter heart, light-hearted.
No, but that was all really interesting, because it's so true. We do take all this for granted, because as you were saying, you know, those geostationary satellites, I wouldn't be able to fly my planes.
You see that?
Them, you know,
Absolutely.
I couldn't get from A to B.
Yeah.
But, you know, on a lighter note, since we're talking about venturing out to space, I'm interested in this rumor of you being the UN ambassador for aliens.
Oh, okay.
How did that come about?
No, that was a long time ago when I was still at the United Nations, and I had gone to a meeting of the Royal Society that they were celebrating their 350th anniversary. That's how old they are. And they decided one of the topics that they would address in becoming 350 years was about extraterrestrial life. And they had a big conference, and what they wanted to know from me was, how are we going to bring the issue of extraterrestrial life to the United Nations for it to be accepted, you know, for it to be debated, okay? And I had an example of how asteroids or near-Earth orbits, which previously nobody cared about, you know, but the scientific evidences were there, and it finally became a debate, a topic of debate in the United Nations right up to the General Assembly, because you need to do the science, you know. And the issue of extraterrestrial life is the same. People used to think extraterrestrial life is UFOs, you know, aliens, giggle. No, the issue of extraterrestrial life is a very scientific question, because it also, from there you reflect our own life. How did our own life, you know, evolve and all that? Even if you don't believe in evolution, there are still aspects, you know, that will impact your own belief when you know how alien life begins, or is there alien life? Anyway, so back to your question. So I was addressing issues like that, you know, what sort of arguments could you make to persuade the United Nations to take this as a debate? And I gave some, you know, arguments. And so some people thought that I must be doing this because I am the UN ambassador for aliens. So it was, you know, it was something the newspapers decided to throw out there. And that got me into quite big trouble because I wasn't the UN ambassador for aliens. But my friends, you know, in the space agency, my friend in the UK Space Agency, he was the one who got into trouble because the press, the media asked him if there was an alien landing or anything, or if there was, somebody discovered extraterrestrial life in other places, how would the United Nations deal with it, you know? And, or even if some alien landed, how would the Secretary General, for instance, deal with it? And he said that the first office that would have to look at this problem and ascertain what are the circumstances, is this genuine or whatever, is the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, which I was director of. So if there was a cartoon, take me to, with the alien, you know, take me to your leader, the cartoon shows me not as a leader, but as a first point of contact, you know. But then it will be up to my office, it's no longer my office now, to advise the Secretary General. What is this? Is it genuine? Then I would have to do the job of contacting all the space agencies. If you want to make measurements and everything, my office would have to coordinate all of that, which makes us the first point of contact. And therefore, I must be the ambassador for aliens. I know it doesn't really, doesn't connect, the dots don't connect, but the media loves it.
That's really cool, though, to be known as the UN ambassador for aliens.
Yeah.
But do you believe in aliens?
Aliens as in extraterrestrial life? Yes, there is life out there. It is, you know, to me, how could we think that there is no life except us in this universe? And if, like me, you know how big the universe is, and if, like me, you know that there's not maybe only one universe, but many universes created by God, or however you think about it, why is there only one type of life form? Even on Earth, can you see the millions of types of life forms that came up from all kinds of habitats, no ecosystems? Then why do you think there's only one ecosystem, which is the Earth ecosystem, that allows life to happen? But you know, now people are getting more and more accustomed to the idea that there are now thousands of planets, those that we have detected. In theory, there'll be millions, billions of planets in our galaxy. And 3 days ago, somebody found a planet in another galaxy.
Wow.
So if you look at the statistics alone, don't look at anything else, just look at the statistics. Some people still say, we can defeat the statistics and say only one planet will harbor life. I don't agree. Because life, of course, life like you and me with 2 eyes and 2 ears. Oh, why? We are not the only kind of life in this on our planet. And as long as there's anything near microbial or something like a bacteria, it's life. Bacteria is life. Of course, people question whether a virus is life, but there are all kinds of definitions. Or is computer life? You know, there are all kinds of things. But no, it'd be arrogant for us to think that no other life exists. I want to just say one more thing. It's about human thinking in this whole thing. We started out as a civilization thinking that we are the only living things in this whole universe, not that we even knew what the universe was. Then we, through our science, of course, there was all the observations they did then, they discovered that actually we are not the only planet, there are other planets. Okay, so we already start to think, but we always think that all the planets revolve around the Earth, and even the sun revolves around the Earth. But by more observations, we realized, actually, we don't, the sun doesn't revolve around us. We revolve around the sun. So already it's another mindset where you have to think, oh, you mean the whole universe doesn't revolve around us? It doesn't. And that's the Copernican theory, you know. So then we discovered our sun, which is extremely important, is not the only sun. Our sun is one of many billions of suns around the galaxy. Then you think, oh, okay, this is our galaxy and we are very, very important. Then one day we discovered, oh, ours is not the only galaxy. There are billions of other galaxies. And so the more the more knowledge you have, the more you know that we are not the center of the universe. It's the Copernican theory. And now the latest physics that we have shows that we are not the only universe, that there are, from our physics analysis, so maybe an infinite number of universes, except we're not seeing them. But you wait, I mean, when the physicists and the astronomers predict something like that, they will look for them, you know. And who knows, we might find another universe, maybe not in my lifetime, but I think you might find the other universe. So it's arrogant to think that we are the only within this huge multiverses that God created, that only we exist. I want to ask.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
So my question is about, I know you have said that there's all kinds of life in this world. So I'm fascinated by UFOs, and I'm talking about the flying UFOs, you know, the ones that you can see in movies and the documentaries.
Yes.
So the first question is, do you believe we have been visited by that kind of intelligent life? And my second question to you is, what is a question you would like to ask if you had an opportunity to be the first contact with intelligent life? What would you ask them?
Firstly, about UFOs, I haven't seen the evidence. I'm not convinced by the evidence that we have been visited by. Of course, there are many theories that the technologies that we used to have thousands of years ago, which somehow seems to have disappeared, and therefore they must have been brought here by aliens. And then all the sightings, and especially recently, the US has decided to tell the army, I think, to find out what is really happening with some of those findings, some of those observations, especially with pilots. Pilots see a lot of things that they say is they cannot answer. They don't know what it's about. I hope they do a good job of that and give us the answer. But I'm not optimistic that in the end the answer is, oh, those were ships of some very advanced civilization who came to visit us. I'm not sure that would be the answer. I'm sure the answer lies somewhere on the earth, whether we like it or not. But yeah, I'm looking forward. I have an open mind, because, you know, I believe that life exists elsewhere. So why would I believe that UFOs exist? Yeah, but I'm not sure that whatever people are seeing right now are truly UFOs. That would be my answer to it.
And if you did meet one, if you had the opportunity, if you were called in and suddenly we had an alien landing, I'm sure you've got the protocol in place. By the way, what is the protocol? Is there a protocol in place?
There is no protocol. That's the problem. You see, there is no protocol because the UN hasn't debated it. Because the UN thinks, we still haven't come to a point where we think we need to think about our response when there is, when somebody makes contact. And this contact is not just about them visiting the Earth, you know this, huh? But we saw the movie Contact, it's about us communicating with them through radio waves or whatever waves. No, there is no protocol. And you know what? Because of that, is the Americans, I think, who are in the end going to decide what that protocol is. And this is where...
Sorry, I was just going to ask you about what question would you ask? What is the one?
Yeah, okay, what question would I ask? I haven't thought about that, but I would ask about, about the how large is the universe? Because right now we don't know how large the universe is, because the mystery of dark energy and dark matter. So maybe I'll get into a discussion on what is dark energy? Does it really exist? And if it does, what is it? And what is dark matter? Those are the two most biggest mysteries in astrophysics right now: dark energy and dark matter. And if they are a civilized organization, technological civilization, they would have done their research. I think they would have the answer. And then if I knew and nobody else knew, I would win a Nobel Prize.
And that remains your dream, correct?
Yes. Czarena.
Will Pluto ever get its planet status back?
Nope. Never. Because we are discovering more and more bodies like Pluto. And
okay.
Yeah. And there could even be planet X, that planet beyond Pluto even.
Yes, I heard about that.
Yeah. So we're looking for more planets. We're not looking to reinstate Pluto. No,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Because I know someone who had very, very strong opinions about. They had this whole there's a whole following, about how Pluto should become a planet again.
The astronomers are not working towards that.
Okay.
Dr. Mazlan, now we're going to do the rapid fire round. So Czarena and I have a series of questions that we're going to ask you.
Okay.
I'm sure you've done this similar rapid fire round.
No, I don't think
you've
so.
not?
No.
Okay. So it's more your gut instinct answer. Okay. So the first question is, at what job do you think you would have been terrible?
Terrible Vice Chancellor.
Why?
Because I feel I don't quite share some of the vision of what the Ministry of Education thinks a university should be.
Okay, fantastic. Czarena.
Okay, Hollywood, Bollywood, or K-drama?
Hollywood, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite movie about space?
2001 Space Odyssey by directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Dr. Mazlan was kind enough. I just have to put this in. When the movie Hidden Figures came out, Czarena, I remember. Yeah, you mentioned that in your interview. Yeah. So Dr. Mazlan was kind enough to invite me and my husband as a guest at the premiere of the showing.
In KL.
It remains one of my favorite movies, actually.
Was that right?
Thank you for that.
It's one of my favorite movies too.
But it's not science. But it's not science fiction.
Yeah, it's science fact.
Yeah,
Women.
For sure, about women in space. Yeah.
Czarena.
Okay, next one. Which is your favorite city and why?
Favorite city, I've come to, I need to answer a bit long. Maybe my favorite city is Kuala Lumpur, which is why I came home to Kuala Lumpur. Because I have to live somewhere, I have to live in the city, but actually I just want to live in the outside, in the jungle somewhere. So Kuala Lumpur, because I came home to it. Now there are so many cities I love, but Vienna, Paris, but I can't tell.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
So my question is about, I know you have said that there's all kinds of life in this world. So I'm fascinated by UFOs, and I'm talking about the flying UFOs, the ones that you can see in movies and the documentaries. So the first question is, do you believe we have been visited by that kind of intelligent life? And my second question to you is, what is a question you would like to ask if you had an opportunity to be the first contact with intelligent life? What would you ask them?
Firstly, about UFOs, I haven't seen the evidence. I'm not convinced by the evidence that we have been visited by. Of course, there are many theories that the technologies that we used to have thousands of years ago, which somehow seems to have disappeared, and therefore they must have been brought here by aliens. And then all the sightings, and especially lately, recently, the US has decided to tell the army, I think, to find out what is really happening with some of those findings, some of those observations, especially with pilots. Pilots see a lot of things that they say is they cannot answer. They don't know what it's about. I hope they do a good job of that and give us the answer. But I'm not optimistic that in the end the answer is, oh, those were ships of some very advanced civilization who came to visit us. I'm not sure that would be the answer. I'm sure the answer lies somewhere on the earth, whether we like it or not. But yeah, I'm looking forward. I have an open mind, because, you know, I believe that life exists elsewhere. So why would I believe that UFOs exist? Yeah, but I'm not sure that whatever people are seeing right now are truly UFOs. That would be my answer to it.
And if you did meet one, if you had the opportunity, if you were called in and suddenly we had an alien landing, I'm sure you've got the protocol in place. By the way, what is the protocol? Is there a protocol in place?
There is no protocol. That's the problem. You see, there is no protocol because the UN hasn't debated it. Because the UN thinks, we still haven't come to a point where we think we need to think about our response when there is, when somebody makes contact. And this contact is not just about them visiting the Earth, you know this, huh? But we saw the movie Contact, it's about us communicating with them through radio waves or whatever waves. No, there is no protocol. And you know what? Because of that, is the Americans, I think, in the end, are going to decide what that protocol is. And this is where...
Sorry, I was going to ask you about what question would you ask? What is the word?
Yeah, okay, what question would I ask? You know, I haven't thought about that, but I would ask about, you know, about the how large is the universe? Because right now we don't know how large the universe is, because the mystery of dark energy and dark matter. So maybe I'll get into a discussion on what is dark energy? Does it really exist? And if it does, what is it? And what is dark matter? Those are the two most biggest mysteries in astrophysics right now: dark energy and dark matter. And if they are a civilized organization, technological civilization, they would have done their research. I think they would have the answer. And then if I knew and nobody else knew, I would win a Nobel Prize.
And that remains your dream, correct?
Yes.
Pluto ever get its planet status back?
Nope. Never. Because we are discovering more and more bodies like Pluto. And yeah. And there could even be planet X, you know, that planet beyond Pluto even.
Yes, I heard about that.
Yeah. So yeah, we're looking for more planets. We're not looking to reinstate Pluto. No. Okay. I'm sorry.
Because I know someone who had very, very strong opinions about. They had this whole there's a whole following, you know, about how Pluto should become a planet again.
The astronomers are not working towards that.
Okay.
Dr. Mazlan, now we're going to do the rapid fire round. So Czarena and I have a series of questions that we're going to ask you.
Okay.
I'm sure you've done this similar rapid fire round.
No, I don't think
you've
so.
not?
No.
Okay. So it's more your gut instinct answer. Okay. So the first question is, at what job do you think you would have been terrible?
Terrible Vice Chancellor.
Why?
Because I feel I don't quite share some of the vision of what the Ministry of Education thinks a university should be.
Okay, fantastic. Czarena.
Okay, Hollywood, Bollywood, or K-drama?
Hollywood, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite movie about space?
2001 Space Odyssey by directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Dr. Mazlan was kind enough. I just have to put this in. You know, when the movie Hidden Figures came out, Czarena, I remember. Yeah, you mentioned
yes,
that
yes.
in your interview. Yeah. So Dr. Mazlan was kind enough to invite me and my husband as a guest at the premiere of the showing.
In KL.
It remains one of my favorite movies, actually.
Was that right?
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
it's one of my favorite movies too.
But it's not science. But it's not science fiction.
Yeah, it's science fact.
Yeah,
Women.
for sure, about women in space. Yeah.
Czarena.
Okay, next one. Which is your favorite city and why?
Favorite city, you know, I've come to, I need to answer a bit long. Maybe my favorite city is Kuala Lumpur, which is why I came home to Kuala Lumpur. I actually, because I have to live somewhere, I have to live in the city, but actually I just want to live in the outside, in the jungle somewhere. So yeah, Kuala Lumpur, because I came home to it. Now there are so many cities I love, but you know, Vienna, Paris, yeah. But I can't tell you which one is the best. And maybe because I came home, I actively decided I want to come home to Kuala Lumpur.
Yep.
Because there are certain things about Kuala Lumpur many people don't realize what a great place Malaysia is. So yeah, maybe for now I'll say Kuala Lumpur. Why not?
Doc, Asian or Western food on a night out? So I know where to take you out next time.
I'm not so much into food anymore. Perhaps it's because of my age. Asian, Japanese.
What is the one dish you can cook really well?
Oh, curry, any curry at all. So I have enough experience with curry because my children love the curry. You know, chicken curry, beef curry, or just vegetarian curry. Yeah, I think I can cook curry quite well, but not to gilling things. You know, to start with my mother before, I had to help her. What is that word, gilling? All the spices, but no, you don't have to. So
I don't know if there's an English word for gilling. Gilling is such a Malaysian.
Yeah. I don't know. I used to do that when I was younger.
Okay. Next question. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Richard Branson?
Elon Musk.
Space, moon, or Mars?
Space, moon, or Mars? Quite odd, that question, because space is moon or Mars. But yeah, Mars. I think Mars will be so exciting. And especially, especially they can go with Elon Musk.
Yeah. So actually, I do have one final question though.
I can go with Elon Musk, I said.
I do have one final question though, to wrap it all up. Would you want to go into space now that it's possible for tourists? I mean, it's going to be available in the near future.
I'm not into the tourist thing actually, because I mean, Richard Branson says in his advertisement that he's inspiring the young and come to space with him. I have a little bit of issue with that, because it's like buying a plane ticket, going to a plane. It's not quite that exciting, you know, not to me. But I'm excited about going to Mars, because there's a lot. It's like going to Antarctica, and I've been there, you know. Some people have to go to Antarctica to set up the base so that other people can come. Similarly with Mars, you have to build the stations and all that, of course, with robots, you know. But there's a lot to do at Mars, on Mars, the science, the technology, the engineering. I always say to people, if Elon Musk walked in right now and told me, "You're going to Mars, let's go," I would go without batting an eyelid. You know what the Malay says, sehelai sepinggang. I would do it.
Doc, that brings us to the end of this interview. I think for me personally, it's been actually very eye-opening. I've heard a lot of new things that you've shared that you've not shared before. So I just want to say thank you so much. And Czarena, would you like to also say a few
Yeah,
words?
it's been a real pleasure. I feel so lucky that that we were able to do this today.